the internet. So anyone from the public, there we go. Guess we have to say got it. So anyone from the public can watch. And this is the 7th meeting of the Special Legislative Commission to study the civil service law, personnel administration rules, hiring procedures, and bylaws for municipalities not subject to the civil service law and state police hiring practices. I'm Representative Kenneth Gordon. I'm the House co-chair, and I'd like to, we were introduced to, but introduce again, Senate co-chair Mike Brady. Senator Brady, you have some remarks you want to share?
Just want to say good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending this meeting virtually again. I know it's been a tough year with COVID, and we were hoping after Labor Day we would start getting back to somewhat normalcy, but we're still on virtual meetings, so it's a way of the world we're living in. But I appreciate everyone's patience.
I just want to thank you very much, and I want to give a special shout out on this day before the anniversary of 9/11. First of all, pointing out that I know that some of you may have a scheduling conflict because some of the municipalities have ceremonies commemorating 9/11 today. And if you have to go, certainly we understand that. But a real shout out and gratitude to our first responders. Our New York firefighters lost so many brothers and sisters on that day. Our police were there to protect people. And so we all in state government and we all in Massachusetts really appreciate the sacrifices that were made during this commemoration of such a tragedy. So I'm going to move straight in. We have been hearing from basically the points of view of the various organizations represented in our commission. So everyone would have their time and their day. And today is the labor side day. We've previously heard from the government officials working on the civil service issues. We've heard from the municipality or management side of these issues, the hiring side of these issues with some of the challenges they've described. Today, we're going to hear from the labor side. Before we do, I want to call roll because folks watching from the public or tuning into the video, I think have a need to know who's here. And so I'm going to start off, just tell me you're here. We'll go through the list. Marcella King, Department of Corrections. I appreciate that some of you are on mute. Michael Papani.
I'm present. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning.
Thank you. Tom Reddy, Police Union.
Present. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. Sophia Hall, ACLU.
Good morning. Present.
Good morning. Neil Osborne, NAACP.
Good morning, Chair Gordon. Neil Osborne's here.
Good morning. Thank you. Larry Calderon, Lawrence Calderon, are you here? I know you may be late. Okay, you called in.
Mr. Chairman, I spoke to Larry. He's the subcommittee on qualified immunities having a hearing this morning or a meeting, and he's going to attend the first few minutes of that. So he'll be joining us, but after his attendance there.
Thank you very much. We're used to when we're live in the legislature, we're used to these hearings or meetings going on concurrently. Now we're doing that's happening virtually as well. So I appreciate that, and I appreciate you telling me that. And we did hear from him that he would be here a little later. Christopher Del Monte.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. James Wona.
Present. Good morning.
Good morning. Jeffrey Lopes.
Good morning. Present.
Good morning. Stephen Gabriel. Say please.
Good morning. Present.
Thank you. Robert Quinnen.
Good morning. Present.
Thank you. Eric Estepanis. Eric Estepanis. Okay. Ron Renaud.
Present. Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Richard Sweeney has said he will be he's not present, but he will be watching the recording. That didn't change, right? Mr. Sweeney, you're not here, right? Okay. Tom Lyons.
President here, Mr. Chairman. If I can, Mr. Chairman, I have to leave a little early. Boston and Massachusetts this week is hosting 38 Medal of Honor recipients for their convention, and I'm chairman of the committee, and I am going to have to jump off early, but I just want wanted to thank you and Senator Moore, who were supportive financially to bring the Medal of Honor Convention in Boston. So thank you.
I thank you very much, and I know you had the support of all of us. So, excuse me. Thank you very much for that work, and we understand. Let's see, Secretary Poppy, I think, contacted us.
I am present.
Oh, okay.
I
Okay.
finished my meeting. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Jesse Flynn?
Present, thank you.
Jen Breaker?
Present, thank you.
Kimberly Parr?
Ann Landry standing in for Kim Parr.
Okay. Representative China Tyler? Representative Maria Robinson? Vice Chair Natalie Higgins, I see you there.
Present.
Thank you. And Rep. Patricia Haddad, Representative Haddad, I see you there too.
Haddad here, good morning.
Representative Whalen, are you here? Okay. Senator Michael Moore, I think I see you, right?
Yeah.
Senator Edward Kennedy,
I'm here, Mr. Chairman.
welcome. And for Senator Theodore Thomas, are you here?
Present, thank you.
Okay. Just, I think you're aware of this, but anyone who's here with a representative, that's being recorded that you're here. And I think that's important because, again, I think the public knows that your voice is still present in these meetings. And so we make note of that. Also, well, I have a note to say that if anyone joins after the roll call, to tell Attorney Donovan that you're here, although you wouldn't be here to hear this. So in the future, if anyone joins after the roll call, just be sure that you send an email or just go into the chat and send a direct chat to Elizabeth Donovan so that it's noted that you're here. Really quickly, we circulated the minutes of our last meeting, I think yesterday. If you had a chance to take a look at that, I would take a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The motion carries. The minutes are adopted. So let's go straight into our agenda, our presentations today. First up, I see Representative Whalen is here. So do you see that in the chat? Firefighters Union presentation by Commissioner Michael Papani.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the commission taking time to listen to the labor side of this mission that we're on. We've heard through all these subcommittee meetings, through the full commission meetings, a number of recurring themes. We've heard about residency and how it can be restricted. We've heard about the cost of civil service and how it's prohibitive for a lot of people to get either on the jobs, the police and fire jobs, or even through the promotional process. We've heard about recruitment, how important it is, how it's different, maybe even through the state police system that had their presentation regarding how they have a robust recruitment effort. And we've seen pie charts and numbers and PowerPoints and all those things. And today, instead of giving you more of that, instead of giving you more things to dissect and look through, what we have today from the fire side is a couple individuals who are who live and work and exist within the civil service system, or did and no longer. I have William Mosley from Worcester, who is a captain of on the department. He does the recruit investigation, the candidate investigation, as well as he acts as our diversity officer. I also have William Taylor from the Marlborough Fire Department, who also does the candidate investigation. Marlborough has come out of the civil service system. So we can just kind of take a real look from people that really exist in the system that we're looking to adapt and examine and see how it really works. Not through any numbers or through any other interpretation, but how the people that work in this system day in and day out really have to function. So with that, I would ask Captain Mosley of the Worcester Fire Department. He has some remarks and presentation for you.
Thank you, Mike. Good morning, everyone. As you said, I'm Captain Mosley, Worcester Fire. Along with being a captain on the line, I serve as the city's, the department's diversity officer for the past 4 years. And also sorry about that. Part of candidate investigations for the past 3 classes, and currently we're going through candidate investigations now. So when it comes to one of my main objectives as a diversity officer, I want the department to look as much like the community that we serve as we can, and we have to operate within the constraints of civil service. And I feel that looking at civil service now, the short version is that diversity is up and numbers are down. And, you know, that's kind of a 2-pronged attack for me based on equitable access and cost to the process. So we look at the makeup of the city of Worcester. We're 55% white, 21% Hispanic, 12% African-American, 7.5% Asian. And, you know, currently, you know, walking into my position, my department was like 9% diverse, 91% white male. So I feel, you know, we kind of took an approach that it was essential to dedicate resources, time, money, and people to recruiting and community engagement. That involved a more organic approach where we spend a lot of time in our schools, our public schools. We spent a lot of time at community events. We, you know, developed a committee that was responsible for creating community relationships, whether it was with religious groups or social groups, that we made a 2-way relationship that gave them access to the fire department and gave us access to them in the form of drawing interest to the job. And over my time, we're really starting to see that work pay off. Looking at our current civil service list, we have 130 residents on it. Of the 130 residents, 31 have a language fluency other than English. 21 of those speak Spanish, 5 speak Vietnamese, 5 are other, and we have 6 females. So that's just based off the information we get from civil service. We don't get any clear demographic information, but that's what I can draw looking at the list. Now, being a part firsthand of this candidate investigation process, I'm physically seeing that that list of people is more diverse than the numbers even suggest. And if I could put a percentage on it, it's close to 40% diversity in that list of 130 people. But now we kind of put that next to, why is the list so small? I know when I came on, the test was $75 and there was about 3,000 or 4,000 people on the list. Now it's 200, it's reduced to 200, it was 250 plus 150 for the PAT. And in the city of Worcester that has a 20% of its population living below the poverty line, you kind of limit the access to everyone to sign up for this process. So we have the engagement, we have the interest, but now our next obstacle is the cost. You know, I think there are plenty of poor people that make great firefighters that never get an opportunity to. And even some of the tools that are available, like waivers, Waivers are available for people only on welfare or public assistance. But there are plenty of people who are poor that aren't on welfare or public assistance. And now you're asking some of those people to choose between paying a bill or rolling the dice just to get it, to have a chance to potentially be hired down the line. It makes our job difficult as far as bringing in enough people to participate in this process. And that's kind of on those two prongs, that's what we face right now. Any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you, Captain. Mr. Chair, if anyone does have questions for Captain Mosley, he is actively working to bring on 60 new firefighters in the city of Worcester over the next year, all within civil service. And that's why we had him here today to show how he exists and works within the civil service. I know he's actively doing it right now. If there are questions for him, so we could let him go before we go on to our next speaker.
If I may, I have a question for the captain. I want to just get a clearance. So Captain Mosley, are you against civil service in your estimation then?
No, not at all. I think it's valuable.
Okay, I just want to get that clarified because you mentioned that. The next question I have, in regards to collective bargaining, because we had a residency issue in Brockton several years ago, that, every couple of years when contract negotiations come up, we have a right for collective bargaining. In the Brockton firefighters back in the day did bargain to change the residency requirement to after 7 years, they could move out of the city. And how has that worked in your community in Worcester with collective bargaining?
I'm not in a position. That would be my brother Mike Papani's wheelhouse. I'm not a union official.
Sure, thank you. Well, Mr. Papani, if you want to, because you do have a right for collective bargaining. Has it been a difficult situation or not, or it depends?
Senator, well, our contract does not require residency. We fall under the requirements of civil service to live in the city a year prior to taking the test. Beyond that, we do not have a requirement. I would just say that the residency for Worcester, as Captain Mosley gave all the numbers about our diversity, and if you look at what Chief Vona presented to us at a previous meeting, if there are good candidates from all different backgrounds that may or may not get on the job in Worcester, but could get on the job right next door in Shrewsbury, that pool is restricted to Chief Vona. If we look at what he presented, where Worcester candidates could then, if not be on the job in Worcester, they could go over to Shrewsbury and things like that. That is where we see the residency come more into play as it goes. I think as well, Captain Mosley has obviously gone through the ranks. He's also participated in the promotional process within civil service. And I don't know if he wants to touch on that as well, where he is afforded all the same benefits as the rest of our firefighting community to ascend through the ranks.
Yeah, definitely. I found civil service going through the ranks to be favorable in fair, not difficult, and I wouldn't change any part of the promotional part of civil service. My only area I think should be improved maybe is the cost, and I think that will expand our ability to draw from our community a little bit better.
Thank you, Captain, for your input. I just wanted clarification on the civil service. And the other thing, I certainly support collective bargaining myself as a legislator. We have had issues, as was talked about with the residency in the past, where there was a ballot initiative, and it goes back and forth. It seems every couple of years, it's put on the ballot, the whatever committee, the voters may vote for residency requirements, but you do have a right for collective bargaining. And then now in some communities that I represent, they're talking about doing away with residency because they can't find enough qualified help living in even a city the size of Brockton that's over 100,000 people. They say they're difficulty finding people to fill some of the positions, now, not just in the fire department or any public safety, but even in city jobs, for instance, qualified personnel, because there's certain requirements that they have to have in some other positions as well. But every couple of years it goes back and forth. And again, that's why everyone does have the right for collective bargaining. And then I know it was mentioned with the waivers. I know sometimes we had a city employee that was single when he got on, and then he was getting married and his wife didn't want to move into the city. So he did ask for a waiver, but sometimes people don't want to air their personal situations in the public when they ask for waivers, because I know they do have a right to ask for a waiver and apply for a waiver. So it's been a touchy subject on both sides of the equation, you know, so. But I thank you both for your information and your input on this.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, please.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
go ahead, Mr. Representative Whalen.
First off, just want to say hi to Will and Mike. Haven't seen you guys in a while, and thank you for the work that you guys do every day protecting the city of my birth, the heart of the Commonwealth. I just wanted to speak for a brief moment just to in full support of and to again emphasize the point that Captain Mosley was trying to make as well, that I think that access to the exam is something that that I'm sure we all agree is something that we should be eyes wide open to, and looking at a way to get folks coming from that don't have the financial means to take the test, getting more of them access to the test, whether that be we make the test, we recommend that we make the test free, or whether we expand the waivers for the fees, because the idea of $200 fee to take a test, to me, particularly in a city where that there are some people that just can't afford to take it, you're in essence asking them to buy a $200 scratch ticket with the hopes that it might pay off with a job that'll help lift them up and get them a really good job. So we have to find a way around this. I think back to when I took my exam for the state police back in 1987, there was no fee to take the state police exam. Back then, it was you just sent in your paperwork and it was completely free. Now, like I said, the idea of $200 to take a test, to me, it just seems restrictive and something that we really need to take a look at so we can further achieve this goal of diversifying the workforce. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Representative Whalen. I just want to get in a couple of quick questions that sort of from the House Chair point of view. Captain Mosley, and I appreciate the point that you're making, that the fee is frustrating. It must be frustrating some, if not many, candidates from entering the system. And also, we've heard that there's a problem with access to labor with respect to firefighters and police. And so, for both the reasons, this is something we need to address. Can you talk about your experience working within the civil service system, as instances in which you believe you benefited or were frustrated by the rules that were in place? Because it is our charge to look at what we can do to improve the system, or if these towns that are leading it have reasons to do so, to look at whether there's a better alternative. Any suggestions you can make for us?
I think, outside of the cost, the way it's set up, it seems reasonably fair. If we could make the access more equitable, I think the system is great. I think, maybe a study, a parallel track study for a couple of exams of some of the preferences and how they're distributed, maybe kind of seeing, if we tweak them, what it would look like And if those numbers favored more equitable access, then maybe consider those. Promotions, I feel that is probably, from personally the most beneficial, because it kind of eliminates cronyism, nepotism, any ism that would prevent people without the connections to move up. So, and I know that recently civil service has adopted some assessment portion of promotions, which I think is a great step also.
Thank you. Secretary Poppy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can everyone hear me okay?
You can.
But, I apologize. I was a couple of minutes late. I did certainly, with tomorrow being the 20th anniversary of 9/11, with everyone assembled here from public safety and the veterans community, I did want to start by thanking you and recognizing all of you for all the work that you do to protect our citizens. Just wanted to make sure I didn't let that go by, how deeply grateful that we are. But I did have a question. Thank you very much, Captain Mosley, for your presentation. When you gave the demographics, I was trying to write that down quickly. In your department, and if you can't tell me, maybe Mr. Papani can, how many of your members are veterans and how many people on your force are women? And if we don't have it now, if I could get that later, that would be helpful.
I don't have the number on the veterans, but we have 8 women.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry, 8 out of how many?
Our complement is 409. We're not there. Mike may have the more accurate number, but I think it's somewhere around 380.
We're currently at 386 firefighters in Worcester due to attrition and waiting to hire the next 60 firefighters over the course of the next year.
Okay, well, thank you very much for all of your efforts, making that engagement to the community to get them more involved. And when you do have the information on the veteran component, I'd appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Rob, Mr. Quinnen?
Captain Mosley, I wanted to assume, just for the sake of argument for the moment, that making the entrance level exam completely free would not necessarily solve the problem of having having a sufficiently diverse pool of candidates for a big fire department like Worcester to choose from. So with that premise for the moment, I wanted to ask about whether the Worcester Fire Department has any particularly strong working relationship with local educational institutions to serve as pipelines potentially to the Worcester Fire Department. Do you work with community colleges? What's happening on the recruitment front?
To your point, yeah, I don't believe making the test free solves the whole problem. Like I said, you have to dedicate resources to recruitment and community engagement as well. So we do that. In my role, it was a one-person role. It has been expanded to a committee of 6, and we break apart some of the work when it comes to communities. So I myself connect to the colleges. I have another member of our committee who connects to high schools. I have another member of the committee who connects to 2 of them actually, who connect to community organizations and churches. So we open dialogue and pipeline. Quincy Community College in particular, we have a relationship where not only do we have access to the student population, but now we helped launch a mentorship program dating back a couple of years where some of our firefighters connect with some of their fire science students to kind of be a soundboard bounce back about advice about the job or learning the skills that come with it. So we have very direct robust and mutually beneficial relationships ongoing in our community. And we feel that is the best way to recruit and have it to continue to grow. Kind of a nonstop flow of access between the community to us and us to the community.
And if I may, a follow-up question. Do you think that the community colleges are doing all that they can do to attract students to fire science degree programs? Or do they have the support to do recruitment on their end, to bring more students of particularly diverse students or more women into fire science programs?
I'm not sure because I'm not privy to their makeup prior to me engaging with them. But I know that we have one community college and their program is pretty substantial. So we just, like I said, we keep ourselves in touch and we participate in as much as we can with them. We are constantly creating recruiting initiatives. One thing we do have on our wish list or dream board is to create a public school access day where students from the public schools come in and they see a live fireground evolution. They see the work we do and how we do it, and they have an opportunity to engage us after on how it's done or what the process entails. So just constantly being available, because in particular for the fire department, we live in a box, we answer a call, we go to it. At that call, we don't really have the time to engage with the public. We have an emergency to attend to. We do that, and we get back in the truck, we go back to the box. So our community engagement is kind of stymied in just how we respond. So acknowledging that, we make more opportunities. We keep a live calendar of community events. We keep open-ended, active relationships with members of the community and organizations. And we are seeing the results of that kind of pan out now.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. We have hands up from Representative Haddad and Sophia Hall. I'm going to call on you. I'm a little bit mindful that we have a full program today, and it seems like we're halfway through the first, and it's a busy day right before 9/11. So I want us to be able to move through the agenda, but let's go with Representative Haddad and then Sophia Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is very quick. Are there incentives in your department in Worcester for getting more credits, either college credits or something towards your bachelor's or your associate's degree?
To my understanding, civil service does not allow for that right now.
Okay. Thank you.
Sophia Hall. Oh, thank you.
Good morning, Captain Mosley. I appreciate your comments and thoughts about the recruitment component of this work. I'm wondering if you can share anything that you may know in terms of your experience inside the investigatory side. So once you have identified candidates and are looking into the background check process, in your experience, are there any systemic or structural barriers that may result in disparities during that background check process that we should be discussing?
Yes, actually, I thank you for that question. So I felt we've addressed it in our department, thankfully, but I feel that the investigating body should be as reflective as the candidate pool. For example, if I have a kid who grew up in a rough part of town and I grew up in a rough part of town, and I look at his background and see what he's gone through in his life, and I can relate to that, that may make him an acceptable candidate. But if he's looked into by someone who lives 180 degrees the other way, that doesn't make that person a bad person, but he's not relatable to this person and he may be disqualified. I wonder how many applicants have been bypassed due to the investigating body not being more reflective of the community we want to achieve.
Sophia, you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Captain Mosley. I just wanted to say I appreciate those comments. And very quickly, do you have any thoughts about when those candidates who perhaps are wrongfully bypassed, or there are disparities that you're observing, how the civil service system plays in terms of appeals? I mean, is it ideal how it works now, or would you like it to operate differently for those candidates?
So I don't have any particular knowledge or examples of this happening. It's just my own speculation personally. And there is a civil service appeal process, but I don't really have much information into that and how that works out. I haven't been involved in that part yet.
Thank you very much, Captain Mosley.
Thank you.
Mr. Co-Chair, I just have a couple of quick comments. I know we're pressed for time. Getting back to the college question, I know I worked at Massasoit Community College, and I know Bridgewater, which is right down the street from Brockton, they were specifically a teaching college at one point. They've expanded, and a lot of colleges have courses based on what they're teaching, and then that's a wide variety across the Commonwealth. Not everybody is reaching out to teach people, like to get on a fire department or a police department. I know that, and I appreciate your comments, Captain Mosley, about what you do in Worcester to reach out to the community. I know it's difficult. We have the NAACP and other community groups to reach out to, but a lot of people do not have access. And I know the mention of the cost too. We've heard that loud and clear over the past several meetings we've had. I don't know if we can afford to just give a waiver across the board to have a free test, but if in certain circumstances, I think we have to do a better job helping those constituents that cannot afford to take the exam. I represent the city of Brockton, which is a very diverse community. And I know, like in the olden days, people may have read the newspaper to look for job openings or whatever. Most of the time, whether it's the public sector or the private sector, it's word of mouth. If somebody knows, somebody talks to you that you know, oh, there's a job opening here, apply for it, whatever. And I know we live in a different world with all these computers that people get some of their information off of Facebook or those other sources. In your reaching out to your community, is it part of funding in your budget that you're able to utilize funding within the Worcester's budget to do what you do, reaching out? And besides that question, before we end, I want to thank everyone too. I know we have a lot of memorial services on September 11th for our first responders and our veterans. So our hearts and prayers go out to all those families that have suffered since September 11th.
Thank you for that question, sir. Yeah, I have a budget. I was lucky enough to get it doubled in the past year. So it allows me and my committee to be able to get out and do the work we need to do. So yeah, and we have an annual budget that's renewed every July 1st.
Right. Yeah, that's what I figured to be in the local budgets. I know, as I mentioned, Brockton is a very diverse community. Some of my more rural communities are not as diverse that I represent in the South Shore, and they always say, well, they can't find any, residents that would qualify to fall into the pool of diversity or women. And I know that's, even as was mentioned in Worcester, finally we're opening up these jobs to more women, but it's still a long ways to go to hire more women into this workforce. That's been a whole new open door that's getting better, but we're still not there yet. So thank you for all your work, Captain Mosley, and thank you to everybody else on the panel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll go back to Michael Papani, I think. I just want to point out that although I am mindful, I don't want people to have to start dropping off when we get to 12 o'clock, because that's when we're scheduled to end. It might be that what we do is we just move a presentation if the commission is agreeable, because these are important questions, especially Sophia Halls. Those are very important questions. I don't want to cut anybody off. So we might have to just look at our time. And so please ask the questions that you have that go to the charge of this commission. So Michael, I think you had someone else who wants to speak with us.
I did, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you to Captain Mosley for your input and helping us through this commission and through the mission that we have to take a look at civil service. As he pointed out, he exists and he has done incredible work for the Worcester Fire Department in taking us in the right direction, all within civil service, using the opportunities afforded through civil service, using the processes. As he explained, the background investigations and things like that are not controlled by civil service. However, there is the civil service, the entity to appeal should somebody have an issue of being bypassed. There is civil service where they can reach out. I thank Captain Mosley for his time. I know he has to run. He's involved in other things. As I go on to William Taylor from the Marlborough Fire Department, who exist where they were in civil service and now they are no longer. Those same protections and opportunities are not afforded necessarily in his community because they've left civil service. So he exists in quite a different world in doing his job and bringing on firefighters onto their job and through the promotional process. So I would ask William Taylor of Marlborough Fire to present to you.
Thank you, Michael. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for having me. I know you're pressed for time, so I'll be fairly quick here. Just a few comments and basically to share our perspective from our local perspective from a little over 5 years removed from civil service. So by way of introduction, my name is William Taylor. I'm a 35-year member of the Marlborough Fire Department. I also serve as the local president of our local union 1714 for Marlborough Fire. So several years ago, our mayor convinced the city council that it was a good idea for them to leave civil service, better for them. After a lot of work, a lot of time, recognizing that we did not have the votes to stop that, we negotiated the best deal we could. We memorialized the change in our collective bargaining agreement. Our mayor and his chief continue to promote. I'm sure they've spoken to some of your subcommittees. They'll promote all the positive experiences of leaving civil service, including what they believe to be more control over the hiring of new employees. What they won't tell you is the increased cost. When you leave civil service, there is a significant cost to doing business. Now, Marlborough, we're a medium-sized department, 70 to 80, anywhere from 70 to 80 full-time firefighting and support staff employees. Since leaving civil service, we've hired nearly 20 new firefighters. Now, mind you, this is all within the 5 years. 20 new firefighters, many of whom came from with experience from neighboring departments. We've also made several promotions throughout all ranks in that same 5-year period. The cost of accomplishing this is significant, as I said. Every hiring process, every promotional process means review of resumes, written testing, oral interviews, assessment centers, all of that, of which I have taken part in as far as resume review and interviewing candidates, selected candidates, vetting candidates. These tasks were previously provided by civil service at no additional cost to the city. Now, if you also take into consideration the potential for grievances and arbitrations due to the fact that the fire chief has held 4 promotional processes over the last 5 years, all of them grading candidates by different standards. So a lot of those are in contention now, and you'll find that again increase the cost significantly from what the city or town would have been used to from civil service. Average size city such as Marlborough provide these services. previously enjoyed by civil service. In our case, I will suggest that it costs in excess of $200,000 over the last 5 years. And that's for vetting candidates for new hiring, that's doing promotions, that's, and going forward, probably grieving the promotion process that is not as defined as it is currently in civil service. Civil service, for all its faults, and you people are doing a great job trying to fix many of them, at least it's a fair system. We don't currently enjoy that same level of fairness in the city of Marlborough. Another point is, just because the mayor and the city council at the time decided this was a good model, might work for them, they think it works for them so far, they will never admit that it costs them so much more money. Not all cities and towns in the Commonwealth have the expendable resources available to them, as does Marlborough. I would suggest further that larger city departments, Worcester, great presentation by Captain Mosley, and they would fall into this category whereby if you're out of civil service, you need to hire an entire division dedicated only to entry-level hiring and promotions. Again, all at a significantly increased cost. And the last issue, and again, Captain Mosley spoke on this issue, and it's something that we have not done a good job since leaving civil service, and it is diversity. We are not a diverse department. And my thoughts are, once you leave civil service, the responsibility of diversification lies solely with the city and your department. The repercussions from not diversifying also lie solely with the city and the department. Now, we've had several discussions with our fire chief on this issue, and to date, no effort has been put forth by the city to recruit employees who reflect the community that we serve. We have done nothing. We have actually, we've had suggestions of even using SAFE grant money to approach kids in high school and try to do a better job at recruiting for the fire service. Those requests fell upon deaf ears, unfortunately. As a matter of fact, recently they turned SAFE money back to the state. We didn't use it for anything, not for senior SAFE, not for anything. So I suggest that if you're going to be out of civil service, you have to do a much better job at making sure your department stays within a normal range of diversity and reflects the community that you serve. And we currently don't in the city of Marlborough, unfortunately. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would gladly answer any questions you may have. Again, I appreciate your time.
Michael, is it okay if we ask some direct questions?
Absolutely, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I'll call anyone, just raise your hand, but I do have a few. With respect to the department as you now work in it, if you have an appeal that you want to bring with regard to a decision that was made by the municipality, where do you go?
We have no process in which to do that.
Do you have any confidence that if you had an appeal, it would be treated fairly and objectively?
I do not. And to be clear, this is for, I assume you're talking about a potential candidate, someone outside the department.
Right.
I don't know of any avenue for which that candidate could appeal. You could call HR, you could call the chief's office, you could, but no, we don't have an official process for a candidate to appeal anything, as they do at civil service.
I was going to say, and it exists in civil service.
Right.
I know you have some experience there. That would be taken outside of the municipality, right? That appeal? Taken a civil service, right? Yeah. You said that there were about 20 new firefighters hired since the municipality left civil service. Do you know, right? Of those 20, how many reflect, for example, Black or Latino hires? No.
I would possibly 2.
Okay. Does the municipality charge, well, let me back up because you said the municipality administers its own test to candidates, right?
That is correct.
Do you know who wrote that test? Was it written within the?
It is a test that comes from a private company. So they pay for a testing company to provide the test for them.
Before I ask you about the test, have you seen it? Do you know anything about it?
I have not seen the entry-level test. It is, from what I understand, and I know candidates that have taken the test, from what I understand, it's very similar to the test that would be given by civil service as far as the entry-level test. It's very similar.
Do you know if there's a cost to take it?
There is, we've done two. The initial test, once we got out of civil service, they did their own test. They did it for $25, and it was basically just to cover the cost of the paper, I think. 2 years later, they did another test, and they raised the cost to $100. And we have had discussions since then of bringing the cost back down. And a lot of discussion went into this, and the reason why, and it was maybe to limit people just for $25. They figured it was too low, and people would just, throw a dart and see what happens. But increasing it to 100 or over, you are, as Captain Mosley pointed out previously, you're limiting, once you start charging more money, you're limiting the pool of candidates that may be able to take that test.
Do you know if there's a waiver process for the $100 or whatever even if it's?
I believe there is, but again, I think Captain Mosley made a good point that not everyone is going to be comfortable, or maybe it was one of the other speakers. Not everyone's going to be comfortable airing their personal business with the city and asking for a waiver. The entry-level test specifically, and I agree that even through civil service, the cost should be reduced and make it easier for people to take the test.
Do you, I don't want you to speak for anyone unless you can, but from a general perspective, and I'm not asking for particular comments, but what's the general attitude or the mood within the department since you left civil service?
Well, in many aspects, and for the most part, it doesn't affect the average employee there. We don't use civil service for, other than hiring and promotional process, we don't utilize civil service for much. We generally don't air our grievances through civil service. We don't appeal things to civil service. We do that in another avenue. However, the promotional process specifically in our city, the civil service offers a much fairer process than we have going on. We're still working through, this is a new system for us. We're working through some problems, and eventually I would like to think we'll get there. But I guess my point is why the need to be out of civil service, a system that's been set up for over 50 years that works.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Chair Brady, do you have any questions? Okay. Anybody else? Just raise your hand, electronic hand. Okay. I don't see any hand. Oh, I do. Secretary Poppy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for that candid presentation. I guess I would ask you the same question that I asked Chief Mosley, and if you don't have it, and I could get it later, that would be fine. But how many veterans you do have on your force, and then how many women? And I'm also asking the question about women because we have a very active women veterans network in Massachusetts, and women veterans are, they're entering the military at a larger group. That doesn't necessarily mean they want to enter as police and firefighters, but we want to explore those opportunities. So in case you're wondering where my train of thought is there.
Yes. So for again, medium-sized department, we bounce around between 70 and 80 full-time And we currently have 4 women. So I guess percentage wise, in comparison to other departments, not too bad. And what the other part of your question? Oh, veterans overall, I would say it's hard to say in the last group, because I was involved in hiring the last 20, say, there's probably a good half anyway of veterans. And
Thank
again,
you very
I
much.
think I covered in my presentation that many of these employees were just hired from other towns. They took the test and they applied and they were hired. They were already firefighters in other towns. And not all of those firefighters are veterans. They were qualified and they ended up testing and coming over.
Thank you.
Jesse Flynn.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Taylor, for your presentation. I just wanted to ask a question because I'm just seeing a trend from some of the other chiefs and town administrators from municipalities that left civil service. I seem to remember being at the Joint Committee on Public Service when the home rule petition for Marlborough was going through to leave civil service. And I remember one of the main issues being, veterans' preference hurting diversity and their ability to diversify once leaving civil service. And it just seems to me, is that true? Was that one of the reasons? Because it just seems to me that everybody we speak to from a municipality that left civil service, no one seems to be able to show that they've diversified since leaving. And that just seems to be something that we might want to address, because if they're using that as the reasoning for leaving and then they're not doing it, it's just, it's kind of hurting everybody. So
I couldn't agree with you more. I will say that as far as on the veteran side of it, we are hiring as many veterans as we hired previously. And I don't have the hard numbers in front of me, I'm sorry, but I believe that to be the case. And whether it's, younger guys taking the job now that are, in the National Guard currently, or Reserve, Army Reserve, or whatever, I'm including them also. But on the other end, we are certainly have not made any large moves to diversify our department to reflect the community in which we serve. We have not done that at all.
thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. I gather from your remarks that the last several rounds of promotions have been controversial, and that there are individuals who feel that they've not been treated fairly in the post-civil service system. But I also believe that most often when a community leaves the civil service system, they grandfather in incumbent firefighters or police officers so that they continue to have the right, if they choose, to bring an appeal to the Civil Service Commission for a promotional bypass, for example. Do you know whether that's the case in Marlborough?
It is the case.
It is the case. They have the right to go to the commission. Okay. And is there a perception that the commission is not an appropriately neutral forum to air those disputes if people aren't taking advantage of it?
I think most of our problems would not be solved in that arena. And specifically, they relate to problems with assessment centers. Assessment centers, as you can imagine, are very subjective. They have changed in the last 2 assessment centers. They have changed the way that they proceed with them. And those are more, our conflicts are more directly related to that. And we will deal with those in the grievance and arbitration process. We just, in discussions with our attorney, that was just the better way for us to go at this point. But you are correct. Those employees that were hired prior to the city leaving civil service are still covered.
So the commission has some statutory authority to undertake investigations if there are systemic violations of basic merit principles. If people are not being treated fairly in any aspect of personnel administration, the commission can look into that and potentially take action. Now, it may be that, as you say, it would be difficult through this process to solve the problem that you perceive in your community. But I think the question for us might be, is there any benefit to be gained by giving the commission perhaps additional authority to deal with problems of this nature, as opposed to requiring it to go to an arbitrator to deal with the situation?
Is that, you're looking for my opinion on that?
Sure, if you have one, and if not,
I
don't feel you have to say anything.
I don't really.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, I don't see any more questions, Mr. Papani.
Mr. Chairman, that would be the presentation from the firefighters. I appreciate your time. I appreciate the questions. I apologize to the other presenters that have been waiting in the wings while we've taken more than our fair share of time. But that is our presentation, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the police unions. That's Commissioner Tom Reddy.
Sorry, I was having a little trouble there. Thank you, Mr. Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to everyone. This morning, I'd like to offer more of a statement and a presentation on behalf of the views and observations of civil service on behalf of the Mass Coalition of Police and the other police groups. We believe Civil Service Commission is a vital, necessary, fair, and neutral third party established for the resolution of issues rising out of public service employment. As an agency, they facilitate the hiring, promotion, discipline, and at times termination of employees. They do this from a mediator point of view. They have no stake in the game other than to see the appropriately fair outcome achieved. Civil service was established to see that employees were evaluated and provided employment opportunities on their qualifications and not on relationships or their political standing. It's our belief the system is, and will continue to work to achieve that goal. The goal of the committee should be to seek to advance the ability to do this, to identify weaknesses in the system, make recommendations on correcting them, not to seek to dismantle the system and turn those decisions over to many different systems. This, in fact, works directly against the reasons, as we see it, that this commission sits here today. The present system allows initial employment candidates, as well as present employees seeking promotion, to believe they have a set standard of laws, rules, procedures, past practices, to provide them with a level playing field with all others. Those standards will be enforced by a neutral party as opposed to a system with direct gain in the outcome of the decisions. As a result of our many committee and subcommittee meetings, we've had an opportunity to hear testimony, both pro and con on the system. We have not heard much testimony which suggests the system does not work, but suggests some of the major issues are timeliness, expense, and a complicated process. We recently heard testimony regarding the hiring of a new employee, a police officer, which suggested it could be up to 2 years to get an officer on the street. This took into consideration a municipality without a list, waiting a year for an exam, time to process the exam, develop a list, and send it out to the community. This then added almost another year for background and pre-employment activities, and then an academy before that officer hits the street. The suggestion was, without civil service, this could be streamlined. As a result of a recent change by civil service, as we know, that 2-year wait for an exam, or that 1 year wait for an exam has been changed as an exam is being offered, entrance exams are being offered annually. So that concern has been negated. The backgrounds, the academy, they're constant items which, no matter what process or who's doing the hiring, that the candidate must go through. So those are time periods which really shouldn't be reflective or put on to concerns of civil service. Obviously, this concern was addressed very quickly by civil service in short order. I think that's the approach we should take to some of the other concerns presented. Some of those issues were processing time for lists and appeals on bypass of discipline, the cost of exams and related PAT tests to candidates, the ability to diversify, and the formula limiting the number of candidates a municipality is supplied when a list comes down. All of these issues can be addressed with recommendations by this committee. Civil Service already has in place a procedure for requesting selective lists for qualifications. EMT, gender-based lists, or language skills already in place and can be facilitated. If these are not adequate or not structured in a manner which are structured in a manner which is prohibitive or complicated, we have the ability to make suggestions to correct these issues. The system allows preference for veterans as a result of their service to our country. In certain circumstances, allows for selective lists for members of minority groups when there's a showing of lack of diversity. In the present system, if the present system is not adequate or needs changing, we should offer those recommendations to make it better. Many independent employment systems cannot guarantee the transparent process and standardization which civil service presently does. It allows due process at all levels, which is an important component of any system. We can address list size by merely offering an alternative to the 2N+1 system, which should be an easy fix bureaucratically. Civil service is presently set up to assist municipalities with support for recruiting, advertisement, and education for the hiring promotional process. The key to all of this is providing the recommendations and the support necessary to let civil service function properly and effectively. Civil service is predominantly funded by fees collected. We've heard some statements about excessive costs being a deterrent to taking civil service exams or completing the process. The most effective recommendations we can make surround the issue of funding. Locating a source of funding through the state and outside of the fee-generated revenue source allows the system, would allow the system potentially to lower costs, hire staff, purchase necessary materials to reach out to all communities, and provide access to the process. It could also allow free preparatory materials for exams, potentially assist in developing communities with tutorial sessions or recruitment, and to prepare for the exams. It allows staffing to process paperwork more efficiently, advanced technology to streamline the process, and add hearings officers to reduce decision times. It is our opinion civil service works. It's designed to be fair, equal, and inclusive. We should best serve the purpose tasked this commission by working to facilitate the changes that we have identified and providing the resources and funding necessary to make civil service more effective. I realize this is a little bit scripted. I'm not much of a speaker, so my notes are my best way of getting this across. And thank you for the time this morning, and open to any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reddy. My first question, and maybe it's most fair to ask you, or maybe it's Mr. Quinnen, but I'm looking at the funding mechanism. Like you said, we're funding this largely through the fees generated by the exams and in other ways. What does it look like in other states? What are other states doing to raise the revenue necessary to support the civil service infrastructure?
I hope Mr. Quinnen has an answer because I'm not really familiar with the process.
Yeah, I raise it might be to you.
You know, I'd be happy to look into that. You know, the system, of course, embraces both the civil service unit within HRD, which we've heard some data about what it costs to run their activities. And I think it's somewhere on the order of $750,000 a year, maybe a little bit more. And I think the appropriation for the commission annually is less than that. So I think we're talking about state appropriations of less than, you know, $1.5 million annually. But don't quote me on this because I really should check my figures. And I don't have at my fingertips any information about what other states spend on their civil service systems. I mean, many states don't have a civil service system comparable to ours, but of course there are some states that do. And it might be interesting to find out how they raise money for the system. Is it just purely legislative appropriation? Do they charge candidates to take examinations? And is that a major source of revenue? And overall, what does it take to run their system? I'd be happy to look into that.
If you could, we could do that as a staff as well on the committee side.
Well, perhaps we should partner on that. I'd be
Yeah.
happy to speak with one of your staff.
Thank you very much. These are questions, good questions, and we should have the answers to them as we're looking into the very relevant and very fair comment that we're hearing, which is that perhaps the fee is really frustrating access to labor, and especially the labor that we're looking to identify. So thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, I don't see who's, just raise your hand because I can't, you're not on my screen.
Senator Kennedy,
Oh, there you are, Senator Kennedy. Yes.
if I could just ask a quick question. Are there any preparation courses or tutorials in preparation for the exam that currently exist right now? And if there are, who runs those? Would be my question.
I can answer that from a personal point of view. On the promotional level, there are a number of private agencies or companies, attorneys that run seminars, provides promotional materials at a cost to the candidate, at their own cost to the candidate to participate in those. I'm not aware on the entrance exam level. I can tell you locally here, I work for the Lynn Police Department, that over the past, I'd say, last 2 or 3 exams, maybe going a little bit beyond that, we have in-house conducted preparatory and put out to the community a exam prep course, which is assisted by some of the local community groups and our offices here. There, we have attend them in the evenings in our lecture hall. Anyone willing or wanting to come from the public to take the entrance exam can come in, and they walk them through how to, the application process, the type of questions you may see, the type of critical thinking you may use that best facilitates you getting a better mark on the exam. But that's just locally. I don't know if there's anything done on a broader scale in regards to that.
Okay, but that, it sounds to me like that's really more aimed at making sure that the exam process goes smoothly at the beginning, rather than making the candidates be more better able to take the exam, or just you know what I mean. If you have a real estate test, if you're going to get your real estate license, then there's a course that you would take, and then you take the course, and then you take the exam, and it kind of goes like that. But you don't have that with civil service for the police department, and I suspect it's probably not like that for the fire department either. But it sounds to me like that probably would be a good idea to do, not just for promotional exams, but also for entry-level candidates as well. Do you agree with that?
I agree 100%. There is I believe in that when we do this here, there is a brochure or a guidebook put out by Civil Service, I believe, on the exam. Obviously, it doesn't contain actual questions, I don't think, but I think that's what they use to format this class. But certainly, I do think a class which over a period of time taught them the type of questions, the type of thinking, and what they may face to, much like taking a class anywhere else, the learning process, I think, would definitely facilitate, more people being involved.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Brady, Chair Brady, did you have a question?
I just agree that we should get the information of what other states are doing that have civil service. I think that will help us just for informational purposes. And as my colleague, the senator, mentioned, I know when I was in the insurance business, when you work for a specific company, sometimes they would cover the cost of any preparation for a life insurance exam to get your life insurance license. But when you were on your own, you have to incur the cost. Because I've worked for insurance companies, and I became independent several years ago, and I had to pay for my own cost to take any preparation courses and so forth. So thank you for your testimony, though.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any hands?
If I could just correct something I said earlier, I'm now looking at HRD's presentation from several meetings ago, and they said that the total cost to administer the civil service system is approximately $2.2 million.
And you don't know, does it say what they generate in revenue from the exams?
It says, let's see, it says that they generated $200,000 for the physical abilities testing cost. But they were appropriated $500,000 to run that facility, so that doesn't cover all the costs. And at least on the page that I'm looking at right now, I'm not seeing what they bring in terms of exam fees, although I seem to recall them saying was about $500,000.
Yeah, I guess we could look at the number of exams that were administered roughly times 200. But, and also I wonder if now that they go to annual fees, if they are looking at raising more revenue. And again, what we can do as a commission using that information, that doesn't mean that we're going to keep the revenue there. I mean, that we would recommend that we do that, but that would certainly generate more revenue if you're administering twice as often.
Well, assuming that there's as many test takers, that,
yeah,
having it more frequently doesn't necessarily mean that there would be overall that many more test takers.
Are there a number of people, a significant number of people who take the test more than once?
Oh, I think that does happen quite frequently.
Okay. So because the people, that population of people would the test even more frequently, or at least have the opportunity to do that.
If they can afford it.
If they can afford it. Exactly. That's what we're really looking at. Okay. Anyone else for Commissioner Reddy? Okay, Neil Osborne.
Yes, thank you, Chair Gordon. Mr. Reddy, thank you for your testimony. I appreciate you sharing your opinion, but I was curious whether or not you or union presidents feel that police departments are sufficiently diverse. And a second part of my question is, I noticed during your testimony, you mentioned that civil service allows for selective lists for diversity, but under the current system, it requires the municipality to admit past discrimination. Would you share an opinion whether or not you would be in favor of reducing that burden to allow it to call for a selected list?
I will speak personally, I guess. I don't want to speak for everyone else, and from my local experience, I think here, especially in the city of Lynn, it's a very diverse community. We have no issue with that selective list. We in fact have gone out several times, especially for language, because that's what allows us to do for a second language, to seek appropriate lists to get language speakers. It's a very big need here. I believe under the past census, just the recent census, 45% of our population is Hispanic or Spanish speaking, which obviously we have a 185 person department, and we probably have at this point 10 or 11 people who speak Spanish. We have some Russian speakers, some Portuguese speakers. We have some other languages, but certainly it's a huge help to us to have the ability to communicate with our community. So we would not have any union opposition here to doing that. As far as addressing that, and you are correct, it has to come under I believe a federal mandate for seeking the list, selective list. But I don't think, again, my opinion is personally, and for my union, and I think for the Mass Coalition Police, that we would not oppose that type. If we're looking to broaden the personnel to reflect the community, it only makes us better able to serve where we work. I certainly think we would support that.
Mr. Osborne, does that answer your question? I'm a little confused though, because I do think Mr. Osborne raised an important point, which is the standard necessary for a municipality to request a more diverse candidate list, and they've got to essentially certify that they're looking to address instances of past lack of diversity or worse. And so would you support the lessening of that standard so they don't have to go so far as to admit such things?
Yeah, yes, I'm sorry. I probably wasn't very clear on that. Yes, I don't see we would be opposed to that at all. Obviously, again, that's a way to achieve a more diverse workforce, which is going to reflect our community and certainly make our ability to do our job much better.
Thank you. And you might have answered that way. To me, I just didn't. I wanted to be clear that that was included in your response.
As I said, I'm not much of a speaker.
It could be me. Anybody else? Anyone with a question?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Just,
Senator Kennedy?
given the advantage of having somebody speak several languages or having people in the department that speak different languages, do you think it would be a good idea for there to be a preference, or for communities sometimes to offer a preference or some points if you can speak certain languages that nobody else in the department can speak, or if there's a need for a certain language? For instance, I live in Lowell, and Lowell has about 150 families from Afghan coming in. And one of the issues for the school department is who is going to teach the children of these 150 families, because who can speak the language? And that's probably not the best example, but I do think that there are communities where there are people that speak multiple languages that maybe don't speak English. And so would that be a good idea? Is there a lot of value to giving a preference to people to candidates who speak several different languages?
Again, I think that the process exists through civil service to do that. I know we here in Lynn have done that. We've requested a selective list different times specifically for Spanish-speaking officers. I'm not positive, maybe Mr. Quinn can answer that, to how, if you do submit that as a municipality, if you do submit a list for selective hiring for a particular language, what the qualifications are for that to be approved. I don't have that information. I don't know, Mr. Quinn, are you?
So I've recently spoken with the general counsel of the State Human Resources Division about this, and they do go through a very thorough process of evaluating evidence that would establish that there is a true need within a particular community to hire somebody with that specific skill, whether it be fluency in Vietnamese or, a different language. And I think they feel that to avoid, potential lawsuit for that kind of preference, that there has to be a solid basis in fact for approving that kind of a selective certification. And it's very much the same with respect to other types of potential selective certifications, whether it be on the basis of gender or race or ethnicity. But there, in addition, it really is the federal courts that have established really high hurdles to get over. The United States Supreme Court is basically has established that standard, that you have to prove either past discrimination or an equally high factual showing in order not to be vulnerable to a reverse discrimination lawsuit under federal law. So I think that we need to look into this a little bit more thoroughly, but I think that is the genesis of why it is so difficult to get approval for selective certifications. It has more to do with federal law than anything else. Okay. And of course, unfortunately, that's beyond the powers of this commission or the Massachusetts legislature to do anything about it, really.
Well, could I jump in? Because being an employment lawyer, trained, by training, it does interest me a lot. And what we can do is take a look at that body of law with your help, Attorney Donovan's help, and just look to see what flexibility, if any, exists, that we can provide recommendations that would be consistent with any U.S. Supreme Court standard.
Yeah, I think The avenue to explore is perhaps sort of the operational needs analysis that in some federal courts has been accepted. That if you can really make a strong showing and evidence that there is an operational need for a particularly selective, process, then it might pass muster.
Okay. Senator Kennedy? do you have more?
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just was
Oh, no.
really
Thank you.
interested in that issue, that potential issue to address. Anybody else? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for that presentation, and thank you everybody for your questions and this discussion. Let's move on to Larry Calderon. You're here, right?
Yes, Representative. Good morning.
Okay. So Lawrence Calderon, Commissioner Calderon, Mass Law Enforcement Policy Group.
So, good morning. Thank you for having me, everyone. Good morning, senators, representatives, everybody that is with us. I'm going to attempt to use the share screen. If Elizabeth is still on, I think I need the okay to do that, Representative Gordon.
Yes.
Turn it on. You should have the permissions to do that, Commissioner Calderon.
I think I can do it from here. I just it keeps popping up that I need permission. Does that sound right to you? Okay.
All right, try it now.
Okay, that's better.
There you go.
Thank you. Now, of course, you're going to test me and see whether or not I can actually utilize this. We want to use this. We want to hit share. Okay, I think I'm doing it. Hang on one second. Tell me if this pops up. Does that pop up on your screen, Representative?
Yes, it does. We can see it. Civil Service Disciplinary Appeals.
Great, look at that. All right, well, I'm passing so far. Bear with me, everybody, as I try. It's the first time I've actually used the share screen. So I'm going to take a little bit different approach. Tom Reddy, my counterpart there from Lynn, representing the Mass Coalition of Police, also Mass Coalition Police Vice President John Nelson, that is on the board for the policy group. I think most of you on this feed are familiar with myself and John. I'm going to take a little bit of a turn on the civil service presentation and go more or less with discipline. And the reason that I'm going to take that route is most collective bargaining agreements between unions and departments or the municipality that employs them, they don't really address hiring and promotions within the CBA, but due process as it comes into play on discipline is a big deal. And civil service is a huge asset to have when it comes down to fairness and equitable treatment. So I'm going to do this slide presentation and try to give a point of view from law enforcement around the Commonwealth as to how important civil service is to both police and fire, as well as the communities that we're serving. Everybody's looking for fair and equitable treatment, and not to suggest that municipalities as a whole that choose to be non-civil service would treat anybody unfairly all of the time, but history does present certain circumstances where a checks and balances system is very important. So let me see if I can go to slide 2. So you'll see here that tenured civil service employees can contest whether or not there was just cause for their discharge or their discipline through civil service. Very important. Just cause itself is sometimes your collective bargaining agreement. Civil service might be the only option you have when it comes to appealing whether or not a municipality had just cause to terminate you or to discipline you. Sometimes there is the option, dependent on the CBA, whether or not you can go to civil service or an arbitrator. We do have that here in Boston, but I know many of the departments do not have that option. So I'm here very strongly advocating for fair treatment and to make sure that there's just cause that applies under the law, that civil service stay intact as it is today In fact, I even agree with Mr. Quinlan. I think that we could broaden the scope of civil service in how they may apply their responsibilities. But I'll save that for question and answers as I try to move quickly here. I know we're on the clock. Next screen, you'll see do notice that is written and fully specific. Here under the Mass General laws, it's extremely important to know that an employee has the right to know specifically the reasons for the discipline, the reasons for the termination. They're also entitled to a hearing that must occur if you're removed from the payroll, if you're suspended for more than 5 days, that hearing comes into play beforehand. If it's less than 5 days, you're still entitled to the hearing, but it can be at another time. So again, under Mass General laws, it's very important that these requirements stay intact. Civil service gives these two criteria to each municipality, which is a benefit again to the employees that are serving the general public. Here in the next slide, you'll see specifically the Bourne Fire Department has a pretty good case that I can send out if people wish to look at it or are unfamiliar with it. But the commission's guided by the principle of uniformity and equitable treatment to situated individuals. I don't need to read it to you, but you'll see that it's imperative that we have fair and equitable treatment under civil service for employees for similar conduct. That being, if two employees were disciplined, one receives a 30-day suspension for the same violation, and another receives a written warning, that's a problem. And this is where civil service comes into play. Those types of disparities can be examined. They can be looked at by an independent commission, that being civil service. The hearings officer can even take a step further and suggest that a municipality go in another direction. Investigate claims that might come up during testimony. The idea behind civil service when it comes to discipline and termination is we want to get away from any unfair biases. We don't want personal grudges coming into play, favoritism coming into play. We would like everybody to be treated on their merit. Not to say that police officers and firefighters don't do anything wrong. I think we clearly know that that's not the case, but we're looking for fair treatment. And if somebody is going to be terminated or disciplined, we're looking for equal treatment. And civil service, again, provides that avenue for employees that may experience unfair or unequal treatment along the way. And 5, I'm very familiar with this, as you see the slide there, reinstatement of 6 officers after drug testing for cocaine. This is the Boston Police drug testing case that was ongoing for well over a decade that was finally put to rest through the courts. This case spanned for many years. It went into the science of hair testing. There were many experts and studies that came into play through various levels through the court system. But in the end, after a decade, it was found that drug testing treats individuals unfairly, that it is an unfair and unreliable way to test for drugs in the system. And after over a decade, 6 officers were given their job back with full back pay. And it has been since rectified here in the city of Boston under Mayor Walsh. After the courts came through with their decision, Mayor Walsh turned around and just scrapped the entire drug testing policy as it was through the police department for, like I said, well over a decade. It just seems simple to me that civil service would have a role to play in the way officers or firefighters are treated unfairly. It's an opportunity to have a fair shot at an independent authority giving you their opinion at the end of the day. You have a municipality who, for one reason or another, wants to discipline or terminate officers. Naturally, it'd be the role of the unions to provide representation, legal representation for the argument. But at the end of the day, many times both sides just disagree on the outcome. Sometimes termination is unwarranted. Sometimes it's warranted, but sometimes it's unwarranted, and sometimes people are being terminated for the same offense that maybe the other officer or other firefighter are not. And there's plenty of cases that you can look at to see it. Moving on, a couple more here to go. So in this slide that you're looking at, this was an appeal by a Boston firefighter. This was for posted racist language on a social media account. And in this case, what really happened was there was a Boston firefighter that was being terminated and let go for racist language. And during the civil service appeal, if I have all this correct, during the civil service appeal, there were accusations of another firefighter that had similar conduct. And civil service, the hearings officer, took that in another direction, which is where I think Mr. Quinlan was talking about earlier, and which I agree, as I stated. If other facts come up during an independent investigation that would leave a civil service hearings officer to suggest, like in this case, to the Boston Fire Department, to open an investigation and find out if there is truth to the allegation that this firefighter Rowe was being terminated for an incident where another firefighter maybe was not terminated for a like incident, that is something that we definitely want to grab a hold of and support the civil service. In fact, I suggest that we broaden their powers in civil service, give them more opportunity to open up a further investigation, to look more deeply into ways municipalities maybe did not investigate as thoroughly as they should have, or to be more direct, are treating firefighters and police officers differently based upon whatever reason it is. So I'm not going to suggest that it's always, I'm not going to make a statement that would suggest it's for one reason or another, but in this case, there was an accusation by a firefighter that a similar conduct was committed. And in fact, a brother firefighter did not receive the same treatment, that being termination. So this is an important case for you to look at and definitely take into consideration when we're trying to figure out how we can improve civil service. I think one of those improvements is to stay strong with the ability that currently exists in the Civil Service Commission now for the scope of the hearings officer, and in fact, broaden it if we can. Give them more power to look deeply so that we know that everybody is treated the same. Getting into this screen here, you'll see that prior presentations that were given. Somewhere along in my notes, I have approximately 50 communities had responded to a survey, and they had many concerns about civil service, but it seemed to be dominated by hiring and promotions. I don't remember too many complaints coming in on the discipline side. So again, this is why I took the direction for the policy group to be on discipline, because as you can hear, we feel very strongly about it. There has to be due process. There has to be just cause. For municipalities that might be leaving civil service, I'm not quite sure why the firefighters and the police organizations would choose to agree to that. I know many are leaving for different reasons, but I don't see the increase in diversity that has been suggested time and time again when it comes to reasons why we would leave civil service. Many of the communities, both police, fire, and the municipal leaders that have come on as guests and spokespeople, I don't see the diversity numbers increasing, even though they've left civil service. So I'm going to stay on this track with due process. I would hope that at the end, whatever the committee decides to do to change the civil service process, hopefully they'll at least keep intact the disciplinary portion of it. And I strongly suggest, again, I hope I'm quoting Mr. Quinlan right, I strongly suggest that we broaden the scope and the powers of civil service to make sure that if we're going to terminate a firefighter or a police officer, that if we're going to take away their livelihood and the livelihood of their families, that we make sure that we're making the correct decision unbiasedly, with no favoritism and no personal grudges along the way. So I thank everybody for their time. I went as quickly as I possibly could, but I'm open to answering any questions that I may be able to answer for anybody in the crowd. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Calderon. Let me ask you quickly, do you think that a municipality is in a position to provide or to replicate the type of objectivity in handling one of the appeals that we're talking about with compared to civil service?
I apologize, Mr. Chairman. Are you asking me, do I think that the municipality itself can handle treating individuals fairly?
No, I'm sorry. No, of course they can do that. I'm asking if the municipality leaves civil service and the appeal is given to someone, and it would have to be within the municipality. I think that's all that's left. Does that concern you?
It does, to a great deal. Yes, it does. I believe very strongly that there has to be a checks and balances system within the Commonwealth. And unfortunately, right now, municipalities that leave civil service, where are they going? They're going to the courts. And that is a very long, drawn out process. If your only appeal is through the court system, never mind the pandemic and how backed up they are now, but just on a regular basis, my 6 officers here for the drug testing policy, they were in the courts for, Jesus, almost 8 or 9 years. They were going through the court system. That is a long time to be out of the profession that you practice and be able to provide for your family. Civil service, even though they're woefully underfunded, which makes their job difficult, it's still a quicker result in an unbiased and a fair look at the facts. Again, it's about people being treated fairly and equitably. If I do something wrong, I should get a slap on the wrist for it, so to speak. I should have some kind of discipline. But if a brother officer or a sister officer commits the same offense, they shouldn't get more time than I do, nor should they get less time than I do. It's about fair and just treatment. That's all this is. And there has to be a checks and balances system, sir.
Thank you. Chair Brady, did you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Commissioner, thank you for this presentation. If we can all get a copy of this sent to our offices, that would be greatly appreciated because there's a lot of important information. And I agree, it needs to be fair and equitable across the board. Have you heard of, in your research, have there been many cases where if an officer has had disciplinary action held against him, or her for that matter, is there cases where they're not told why they're being disciplined? Is there a lot of cases that you've seen in your research like that they're being suspended or terminated and they're not told why they're being terminated? Is that in your research that you found that to be true?
Again, hi, Senator. Good morning. Sorry. Thank you for having me on and asking the question. Unfortunately, no, I don't know of too many cases where the individual has not been informed, but that's because under Mass General laws that they have the right to be informed.
Right.
Outside of civil service, unfortunately, I don't know too many non-civil service organizations. I don't have that information at my disposal. I can only look into the ones that are civil service protected departments that I deal with daily. And again, under Mass General laws, you have a right to know that. So I don't know of many, Senator. I apologize.
No, that's okay. And you would know more than us because you're on the front lines here. I have heard of situations where if there was a accusation brought up against an employee that they usually are suspended with pay until they go through the due process and find out if they're held liable or not for the actions. And then there's other situations that I've heard that sometimes they're offered an early retirement rather than losing their pension and everything else. And then there's other cases where they have been terminated. And I don't have all the numbers in front of me. It's just, my course of being an elected official, you might hit different sides of the coin there.
It's my understanding that you are correct on many of your statements. A lot of times there are deals that are made between both parties. the attorneys get together from the municipality and the organization representing them, and they come to some kind of agreeable outcome.
Exactly.
Going back to the first part of it, as far as my understanding is, if you don't have civil service protection, if you're not in civil service, in a civil service municipality, then the municipality is not required to actually tell you why you're being disciplined or terminated. I hope I'm correct. If not, somebody please correct me on it, but that's my understanding, Senator.
Well, thank you for that information, because that's important for us to know. And I appreciate, again, if we can get a copy of your written information.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, Chair Brady. Mr. Quinnan?
So I was not aware that Commissioner Calderon was going to select this as his focus of his presentation today, but I want to congratulate him on a very accurate presentation. This is within my comfort zone. These are the issues I deal with almost on a daily basis. Yesterday, in fact, I argued a case in the state appeals court where one of the key issues was whether this terminated employee had been properly advised of any charges against her. She was not a police officer, but nevertheless, the employer had terminated her without specifying what misconduct she had engaged in. And the commission overturned her termination. And I was defending that decision to overturn the termination, in part because of the lack of notification, but also there simply wasn't, in the commission's view, adequate proof of substantial misconduct that this employee had engaged in. And that's one point I wanted to make, is that just cause has been defined by our state Supreme Court to require a showing of substantial misconduct. And they've actually, in a case just a few months ago, underlined the word substantial. It has to be substantial misconduct that impairs the efficiency of the public service. So that's the test to establish just cause. One of the advantages, and I think I've made this point before, but maybe not to the full commission, of the civil service commission process is that it contributes to an ongoing and developing body of law in Massachusetts. And I think the public and really all stakeholders involved should have a high degree of confidence that ultimately the just and legally correct decision is reached. Now, there are some very close and difficult cases because, of course, these cases are so fact specific about whether just cause has been shown or not. There are some very close cases where there may not be agreement about whether the correct result was reached as to whether this employee should have been suspended or terminated or not. But there is the opportunity to then appeal that to the court system, and the courts will take a hard look at the decision that's been reached by the commission and correct it if necessary. We're affirmed about 80% of the time, but there is that 20% where the courts do give us guidance on what constitutes proper just cause. And that's a very important element of our system, I think, in contrast to the more almost private system of collective bargaining that leads to grievances and arbitrations. That's not a transparent system. That's not a system that leads to the development of a consistent body of law, because arbitration decisions are essentially not reviewable on substance. And if arbitrators, get the law wrong, that's not a basis to overturn the arbitration decision in most cases. And it's not necessarily a transparent process either. So I guess I do want to emphasize the importance of having a transparent public system that leads to a consistent body of law that applies to all public employers in the Commonwealth. And it's not just police or fire, but all other types of employees and employers within the civil service system. So, but thank you for that presentation.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for telling me I got it right. I wasn't sure if I was.
Sure.
Thank you both. Mr. Flynn, your hand is up.
Go easy on me, Jesse. Go easy. Are you still on mute? You're still on mute, Jesse.
I'm gonna go easy. I just
make it easy.
Yeah, I just wanted to agree with you that that we feel at DAV that the powers of the Civil Service Commission should be increased so that they could instate, reinstate, order training, order monetary damages for public servants or applicants that have been found to be discriminated against, especially in the hiring process. Maybe along the lines of what the powers the MCAD has. We at DAV have seen several veterans, probably dozens of veterans, discriminated against and bypassed for entry-level positions. They appealed to civil service and win their appeal. And the only fix to that problem is that the Civil Service Commission orders them placed at the top of the next list, and they just get bypassed a second time and have to go through that same appeals process. And maybe Mr. Quinnen could speak a little bit on the powers of the commission and how their hands are tied in many cases to give proper or deserved relief to applicants.
I think that's a very, very important point that this commission needs to look at. I was arguing a case in the state Supreme Judicial Court. It's a case many of you know about, involves a African-American firefighter in Brookline by the name of Gerald Alston. And the commission had ruled in his favor, overturned his termination by town of Brookline. Case was on appeal to the state Supreme Court. And at oral argument, the justice who ended up writing the decision that affirmed the commission was very troubled in his interactions with me about the fact that all the commission has is effectively a hammer. It does not have an array of tools that it can use to solve more nuanced problems. All it can do is, order reinstatement, period. And there are situations where it would make sense for the commission to be able to order sensitivity training, some anti-discrimination trainings at the municipal level, all kinds of other measures that the Massachusetts Commission Against Discrimination routinely uses to try to, combat discrimination. We serve a very similar function within the public sector employment field. We are charged by the legislature with upholding basic merit principles, which includes anti-discrimination on the basis of all protected characteristics. But we don't have the same tools that the MCAD does. And I do think that that's, a significant issue that should be potentially addressed by this commission.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is very productive hearing, and I appreciate all of this information and opinion and advice coming out. It's 5 minutes to 12. Our practice has been to go 2 hours, but I think what I'm going to do is ask Commissioner King if she would like to proceed now. But before you answer, so that if anybody has to leave, could you raise your hand so that Commissioner King would know if it would make a difference with respect to the remaining attendance? So there are a few. Well, can you electronically raise your hand, because if you're on screen too, we can't see it. If you electronically raise your hand, do you see it on the what is it, reactions on the bottom? Just hit raise hand on the bottom, and then we can see you. So if you have to leave, I've got, okay, they're increasing. And we've got a total here. How many people in? We've got 28 participants, and we've got about 7, 1, 2, 3, 6, 7. They have to leave. So I'm going to leave it up to Commissioner King. We can do this now, or we can schedule another meeting to do this, and Secretary Poppy can stay on. Yeah, I'm assuming everybody else who doesn't have their hand up can stay. And we're talking about 12:30. We're talking about another 30 minutes. So we can do another 30 minutes. It's up to you. The folks that have to leave can watch the video, although they can't ask questions. because it'll be over.
Mr. Chairman, can we reschedule it?
We can. So let's
Thank
do
you.
this. We will talk to you about whether we think we can fit in on the 24th is our next meeting. And we're also going to reschedule, or we're just not going to get to the reports of the subcommittee so that we can end within the 2 hours, because I don't want to lose those folks. I don't want them to miss out. We can talk about whether we can fit it in then, or whether we just put another meeting up. There are a few other meetings that I would like, or hearings that I'd like to talk about. We have requested an extension of the time to provide our report, assuming we get that. I personally think, and if it's the commission's wish, that we should schedule at least one hearing to hear from the public. Thank you, Mr. Quinnen. That we should hear from members of the public who may have been watching streaming, who may want to offer an opinion, and we should provide access to that. And I also think we should have something later on in the fall so that the subcommittee chairs can talk about what their subcommittees in a detailed way, the report of the subcommittee, so we can use that as a commission in preparing our report. So with that, we'll postpone the presentation of Department of Corrections. The new date that what is the new date that we have requested through our extension? I've requested March. Okay, so that'll give us plenty of time. I don't know what we'll get, but that's what the chairs have requested. When I say I mean the chairs. Okay. Okay, any last words before I take a motion to adjourn? Look at the agenda. Did I miss something important here? No, that would be it. Okay, on the 24th, we are scheduled for our civil rights groups. Commissioners Osborne, Hall, Lopes, and Sweeney. Okay, and we'll talk further on the Department of Corrections. I hear a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion, sir.
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anyone opposed? Okay, it is passed. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Mr. Chair, have a safe weekend, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have a good weekend.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.